Sex trafficking is probably one of the greatest human rights violations against women and girls in the world. The anti-sex trafficking movement really came out of the women's movement. In the 1980s, it was feminist groups, women who identified as feminists, who launched the anti-sex trafficking movement. It started in Asia, where so many women in the Philippines were being sexually exploited by U.S. military personnel. The exploitation of women and children was recognized in Thailand. And it was really women's groups that organized against it and raised awareness about it. Sex work can never be a choice for someone under the age of 18. That is a United States standard, a federal standard, I think every state, and also an international standard, according to the United Nations Convention, that no one under the age of 18 can consent to a commercial sex act. And anyone under the age of 18 that is used in a commercial sex act is, by definition, a victim of sex trafficking. They become a victim of sex trafficking if they are compelled into that sex act by force, by fraud, or coercion. In the United States, if anyone over the age of 18 is induced to perform a commercial sex act as a result of force, fraud, or coercion, they're a victim of trafficking. One of the things that's happening right now, and this has really started back in the 1980s at the beginning of the anti-sex trafficking movement that was launched by feminists, and that is that this is a debate not only about sex trafficking, not only about sex work, but this is a debate about what are going to be the standards for equality. What is gender equality? Do women either have a right to be a prostitute, or do they have a right to be free of prostitution, and that no one should have the right to exploit them in prostitution? Do some women consent to being in prostitution? Yes, they do. But we know that the vast majority, even up to 85–90%, say that they want out of prostitution, but they don't know how to get out, or they're trapped in it, or they're being coerced into it. Sex trafficking, and for that matter prostitution, is often described as a dynamic of supply and demand. The demand for commercial sex acts is sort of a way of talking about men who buy sex acts, sex buyers. And there is a big trend right now to have more focus on cracking down on the sex buyers, because if they arrest more sex buyers, it will reduce the demand for victims. Traditionally, when someone wanted to crack down on prostitution, they went out and arrested the women. The sex buyers managed to be anonymous, invisible, and no one even thought about them. And if they did, somehow the police always just sent them home rather than arrested them, or even had this sympathetic opinion that we wouldn't want to hurt their families by arresting them, so they were let off. That is changing. There is a movement in the United States and really around the world to increase the arrests of sex buyers as a way of combating sex trafficking and other forms of sexual exploitation. The place where there is the greatest amount of sex trafficking is now in Germany, which has legalized prostitution and legalized brothels. And there is a European-wide debate going on right now, and between the German model of legalization and the Swedish or Nordic model of what is called abolitionist model, in which the men or the buyers of sex are criminalized, but the women or the sellers of sex are offered services. What we're seeing here in the United States, where we have criminalized prostitution for both buying and selling, except for those few counties in Nevada, there are increasing campaigns about arresting sex buyers and providing more services for women in prostitution. There has been no serious crime that's ever been eradicated. You could say the most serious crime would be homicide or murder. We have very strong laws, very strong prohibitions against killing people, but people still do it. But the important thing, of course, is that there are laws against it, and if you're caught, you will be severely prosecuted. We need a new standard for gender equality in the world, and that standard should include the right not to be used in prostitution.